what you like. I always recommend that you shop quickly because remember, the United States government, especially during this time in history, frowns on Mike making coins at home, even though he's social distancing. We don't want him to do that with an ankle bracelet. So we do know what he has.
I would not rock that orange jumpsuit.
You would not rock that orange jumpsuit. But Mike Mizek is, of course, joining us via phone. In about 15 minutes, you have to stay tuned. We are about T-minus 15 minutes away from an encore presentation, not only a history and a legacy coin, unprecedented in history, and globally speaking. You have to stick around because in all likelihood we will sell out of the hit coin from last hour. But in the meantime, oh, wait a minute. Did I put the horse before the cart before the horse, Mike? What are we talking about here?
That's okay.
Okay, a little bit. What? See, they made some last-minute changes because, full disclosure, the Starship Enterprise, they don't have to use the restroom. I did, and during that time, I know they were conferring with you. So let's give the full story here for people who are just tuning in and experiencing this show for the very first time.
Well, you know, in the last hour, we debuted these and started talking about these. Today's our debut of the emergency production issue of the American Silver Eagle that was made at the Philadelphia Mint. This is the NGC version. Now, this is my most limited version, so we will count these down, the NGCs. And the NGCs are going to be extremely, extremely difficult to do. We had first day of issue annex, okay? We've sold, I think, 1,400 or 1,500 of those so far. I don't have half that many of the NGC coins. So here's what happened. So the United States government, late last year, decides they're going to change the design of the American Silver Eagle. It has been, like I said, titanic, cataclysmic. It's one of the most important numismatic events of my lifetime, that after 35 years, they are changing the design of the American Silver Eagle. They simply do not change designs of coins, okay? They just don't do that. You know, the Jefferson nickel we showed earlier, that's changed one time. The Roosevelt dime hasn't changed in my lifetime. The Kennedy half dollar hasn't changed in my lifetime. The Silver Eagle here will change once. And so this is the last year. So it's been incredibly popular and collectible. But given the current events of what's going on in the world today, and the fact that 2020 was so phenomenally popular, the government was already running behind. And then all of a sudden, because of the coronavirus pandemic, they had to shut down the West Point Mint. And the San Francisco Mint was already shut down for a month. And for 12 days, they didn't make any coins at the West Point Mint, which makes all of the American bullion Silver Eagles. They made them at Philadelphia. And then what happened was they told us we made some coins at Philadelphia. So we submitted a Freedom of Information Act request and said, okay, what coins did you make at Philadelphia, and how can we identify those coins? Because we know you didn't put a mint mark on them, okay? And so if we could show the letter, perchance, so somebody got this letter from the United States Mint, and I'm going to kind of read the first part of it here. It says, in light of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, the United States Mint has temporarily reduced production in its facilities in order to reduce the risk of employee exposure to COVID-19. The health and safety of the U.S. Mint workforce remain as our highest priority. Typically, the American Eagle bullion coins are minted at West Point. However, due to the reduced production at the West Point facility amid the coronavirus pandemic from April 8th until the 20th, those 12 days, Philadelphia produced 240,000 coins. These coins were then manually packaged and manually numbered, and then they gave us the box numbers. Box number 400,000 to 400,479. So to give you an idea of how tiny, how minuscule this little slice is, it's 480 boxes out of 400,000 boxes that have been made today. They may well end up at well over 2 million boxes for the year, of which 480 will be from the Philadelphia Mint, which are these coins. Now, this label that you see here, that silver NGC label, that's exclusive to me. I'm the only one that can sell that. Okay, that's the exclusive NGC silver label. And so we've got the NGC coins. We had the NX coins. We showed you the PCGS coins. These are the rarest of the coins that I have. I think in the last hour we sold 1,100 or 1,200 of the NX coins. I think I only have about 600 of the NGC coins left.
Actually, Mike, I'm going to double check. Now on this, Jared, you said what? We only have 300? 500. Mike, you're right. Fewer than 600, though, and that does not take into consideration the hundreds of people who are calling.
Right, and that's the thing. And that's it for these, okay? Now, here's the thing. I may be able to restock these, but it ain't going to be $2.99 already. So and one of the things that we're doing is we were reading that letter. Remember, they manually pack these coins. And that's a big deal because anytime you put hands on the coins, it creates a problem with grading. And at NGC, for whatever reason, the grading percentages are the lowest of, in essence, all the major coin grading things. I don't know why. Maybe it was just the boxes they got, because each box it varies pretty widely. One box might have been packed by a guy who was on his way to lunch and he was in a hurry, okay? And all of a sudden, out of 500 coins in a sealed box, you might only get 50. Mint State 70s. So these Mint State 70s, it's not just that they're collectible from a standpoint, there's only 240,000 coins made, but they're absolutely certified perfect. Now in coin collecting, as in any collecting, the single most important determining factor of value is what? It's condition. The higher the grade, the more it's worth. And in this coin, it's particularly important because it's such a tiny fraction of it anyway. They're going to make 50, 60, 70 million coins. Only 240,000 total are going to be these Philadelphia struck coins. And then out of that, only a tiny fraction of those are going to be Mint State 70. Now, here's the best part. Not only is this one of the single most important coins ever made by the United States government. Not only is that the case, but I've got it at a price that's phenomenally affordable. The only thing that kind of is the same as this, in 2015, which was just a regular year, the Philadelphia Mint made some coins also to help the West Point Mint. Not quite as many as they made for 2020, but they made them. It's just a regular. Well, that coin in Mint State 70, the 15p, it's legendary. It's the same situation, only they didn't do it because the West Point Mint was shut down. They just, they had an extra press and made some coins. That coin's $2,000 to $5,000. $2,000 to $5,000. This coin, because we got in, we heard about this, we got this letter from the Treasury, and we jumped in with both feet. I bought every single solitary coin that I could lay my hands on, because you have to buy original sealed boxes, which the government does not sell directly to the United States public. They only sell them to what are called authorized purchasers. And we know there's only 12 of them, and we know them, and we bought every single box that they would sell us. Thousands and thousands and thousands of coins. Because you have to have the sealed box to send in to the grading company so that they can establish the provenance. The fact that it's one of those boxes that is numbered 400,000 to 400,479. And so we sent these boxes in to NGC. These are the emergency production struck at Philadelphia Mint, $299. This is one of those coins, this is my original issue price. In today's world, there's no possible way I'm going to ever sell this for more, and there's almost a certitude that I will sell it for more, but I'll never sell it for less. Here's the problem. We started with the day, I think, with about 780 of these NGC coins. I believe we are 500 or so, or even less right now. And so what's going to happen is these are going to sell out. That's just the fact of the matter. These are going to 100% sell out. And then that's it. I'm not going to be able to bring these back, in essence, at $299. It's just simply not possible. That's the problem with this. So you have to understand the importance of this coin. That the fact is that the 2020 Silver Eagle is phenomenally, incredibly, ridiculously collectible and popular in and of itself. There's no doubt about that. That's 100% the case. But there's absolutely, positively no doubt that the 2020 Silver Eagle, because it's the last in its line, they are changing the Silver Eagle next year. So by itself, it's collectible. Now you have, instead of these 40, 50, 60, 70 million coins that are being made, now you've got this tiny sliver of coins that were made at Philadelphia. The United States Mint doing everything in its power to try to stay ahead of the curve. They're 10 million, 20 million coins behind right now. Plus, we can see that letter again. This is how we know these coins came from the Philadelphia Mint, because the United States Mint sent out a letter, okay, because of the coronavirus pandemic and out of an abundance of caution for the safety of U.S. Mint employees, They shut down the West Point Mint to disinfect it for 12 days, and in those 12 days, the Philadelphia Mint did the best they could with the skeleton crew that they had, still making circulating United States coinage, to do whatever they could to add to the cause, to try to make American silver eagles. They made 240,000. What they made was one of the greatest collectibles in the history of the United States Mint, and that's exactly what we're looking at right here. I have been doing this for a very, 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 very long time. This is the fastest selling, most collectible coin I have seen in all of the years that I have been doing this. The fastest selling, the most popular coin, because what it does is it literally ticks all the boxes. So you have 2020, you have the end of an era, so just the 2020 coin. Now you have this kind of unique a mintage where it was just for these 12 days that this coin that was made. That was it. It was kind of a secret coin. We almost found out about it accidentally because the Mint at some point said, oh yeah, we were making some eagles at Philadelphia Mint. Okay, Freedom of Information Act request. Now we get the box numbers. Now we can try to hunt them down. But here's the best part, and this is why it's the best-selling collectible coin that I've probably been able to do, because we got in early, because I got such massive quantities. I probably bought, I don't know, 15, 20, 25% of the entire thing, of all the mintages by the time we put everything together. I'm able to give you a price that's not $500, $700, $1,000, $1,500. A coin of this magnitude, you would expect to be significantly more money. And that's the key to the collectability. Look, from a collectible standpoint, it's stunning. But normally, when you have something that is that collectible on all these levels, the fact that it's difficult to get and it's Mint State 70, the fact that it has an exclusive label, the fact that it's 2020 Eagle, the fact that it's this emergency production, all of those things, you know, we occasionally have things that are similar to that, but they're simply not $299. What you're looking at is coins that are now all of a sudden, instead of $299, we're looking at coins that are $499, $899, $1299. The 2015 Ps, the last time this really happened, those coins are $2,000, $6,000, $10,000, not $299.95. And that's the key to this right now. So we are now down under 500. We are now down under 500. Like I said, this is just not restockable for me at this price. So I may well, on my Memorial Day show, bring these back. I'm assuming $349, $399 if I can find them. I'm going to have to try to find more boxes today because, you know, it's just the popularity of this is just, I can't stay ahead of it, even though we bought thousands and thousands and thousands of coins. I found nothing. I found nothing in the marketplace available. There's some guys that have some of these sealed boxes. They're just not willing to put a price on them because who even knows what they're worth? We know that the Mint State 70s, we've established the price at $299. I think everybody's waiting for us to sell these out so they can raise their price is ultimately what it comes down to. You remember there's 240,000 coins, and these coins, let's say, are grading 15% in Mint State 70. So if I sell 750 coins, that represents 5,000 coins. That represents, these coins right here represent 2% of the entire mintage that we're going to sell in 15 or 16 or 17 minutes. That's the importance of this. That's what's happening at the end. We're going to sell today, in terms of the 70s available to the entire world, here on HSN, Shannon, you and I in these 2 hours are going to sell, I believe, somewhere between 5 and 10% of every Mint State 70 coin on the planet that's going to be available.
Boy, when
that's the opportunity because we have the price.
Well, and Mike, you nailed it. And I mean, certainly, if you're watching, again, Mike always imparts so much valuable information, but I'll just tell you, information aside, you do need to be acting now. And I know that's a pretty bold statement, but I need to do it because I know Mike indicated, and you've been seeing that quantity left intermittently at the bottom of your screen. One quick thing about that quantity left, it does not take into consideration the manner in which people are ordering. So if we factor that in with now only 400, we have nearly as many people calling or going online or shopping with their mobile app as we do quantities remaining. Now, that being said, we know unquestionably this will sell out now. And like Mike said, he's going to do his utmost best to get some available, but they will not, they won't be at this price. I mean, I think that being said.
Oh, that I can guarantee.
Right.
That's not a speculation.
Right. That's
okay. That's not a guess. That's a guarantee. Okay.
Yeah, it
I
is.
can tell you that right now, because already if I'm to go to buy boxes in the marketplace, I'm already going to spend a 20% premium, 25% premium to what I bought them for 7 or 8 days ago when we were ahead of the curve. You're buying this now ahead of the curve. That's what you're doing. Okay, now look at that number right there, 387. It just flashed up a couple of minutes ago. That puts us over half sold out. And as you said, Shannon, I'm certain there are literally hundreds of people in various forms of ordering this. And at this point, as I never do, I do not limit quantities. If you want to buy 5 or you want to buy 10, that's fine. One last point that I want to make here. The letter that I've been reading from, we're going to make a copy and send it to you.
Nice.
So you can see it. I think that's part of the entire thing. It really places this coin in context, in a historical context of exactly what was happening. And not only do we have this incredibly important year of the American Silver Eagle, the most popular year in terms of the American Silver Eagle, and now to put this particular coin, this special coin that was made for only 12 days at the Philadelphia Mint because of, like I said, the coronavirus pandemic, they closed the West Point Mint out of an abundance of caution for the Mint employees to disinfect it. The San Francisco Mint was shut down for 6 weeks. And so this is critical for you to understand the importance of this coin. And then we have the importance of this coin. We have the phenomenal limited quantities, making it one of the rarest silver eagles. It's the second rarest mint state eagle in the history of the United States Mint. Only the 15-piece rarer, and that coin is 10 times more expensive than it's this coin. And they're very, very, very similar in terms of mintage. So the problem becomes you must strike now. You must stay ahead of the curve on this, and that's exactly what your opportunity is here. And like I said, I think we're running a very, very, very quickly towards sellout on this. Then when we do, you're not going to see this again at $299.95. This was a stretch as it was.
It was, and in fact, I've got my phone out here. I'm famous for ordering while I'm on the air, and I think this is going to be added into my repertoire as well. And because I'm like you, I listen and I learn from Mike. If you are going to send this across the miles, I'm actually considering getting a couple of these, one for me and then one for my dad for Father's Day. But they don't have to be watching HSN, or they don't have to be, cognizant of the information or hear Mike filling us in and educating us as he always does, because that letter is included. And I have to say, Mike, this for a lot of different reasons, because you and I, again, I've known you for decades, and I always love working with you. I always learn something. But when we started doing shows, even in January, well before we became aware of this situation here in America, 2020 was already a historic year for coin collectors, period. I mean, there were already so many exciting things going on. I mean, you have to be flabbergasted at how the world of coin collecting has really been flipped on its ear, let alone something of this kind of significance that makes not only coin collecting significant who are regular collectors, but now coin collecting is significant whether you've ever collected coins or not, and this is a good example of that.
Coins are place markers. They're time markers. They're event markers. And that's what this coin does. If you remember, I think you were with me, New Year's Eve?
I was.
You helped the TS?
Yep.
Of course we sold 14,000 regular 2020 American Silver Eagles. It was the best-selling Silver Eagle that we'd ever had in our today's special value that we do at usually the last day of every year. Just before all this was in, January 1 in essence, because it's the last year of issue of the heraldic eagle, because the United States government is changing the eagle. That in and of itself is seismic in terms of what's happening numismatically. Now you add in to this is an aftershock, if you will, that what you have with this, because already the 2020 Silver Eagle is phenomenally collectible, phenomenally desirable. It is just absolutely one of those coins that is going to be, because it's the end of an era. They're changing it after 35 years. This is the very last coin in the deal, in the entire heraldic series. They'll start a new series next year. So you have this. It's absolutely stunning. It's absolutely stupefying how important that the 2020 Eagle is. Now you have this tiny little slice. So they're going to make, I don't know, they're going to make 1 million boxes. I mean, I don't know how many boxes they're going to make of the American Silver Eagle. But I know that only 240,000 coins, only 480 boxes are these Philadelphia Mint emergency production coins that mark this time, mark this place, mark this event in history. And that's what we've got right here. And these are the NGC coins. Okay, we had the NX coins, we had some PCGS coins. I think we're going to take a look at those here again in just a minute. The problem is quantity. I know we've got, what, about a minute and a half, 90 seconds or so. That quantity on this is absolutely important because it is solid. It is a hard quantity is what we'd call it. So when you look at this right here, you see that's not a number that I can add on to. There's no wait list. There's nothing else. That's the number. There's 12 dozen coins remaining, and I'm sure there's significantly more people on the phone than the quantity that we have remaining.
I'm one of them. Mike, I've known you for over 20 years. Submit order.
There you go. You got yours in?
I am. I'm telling you,
Well,
and I've been working with you for over 20 years, first time in history. Because and I've shopped after the show, certainly. This is the first time I've ever worked with you that I've actually bought the coin during the show, just because we know it's going to be gone.
Well, and here's the funny thing. I wish I could say it's the first time a host has done that.
Right.
But it's not. Callie, Callie did it one time with some Indian head nickels or Indian head pennies that we were doing. But she had to have them. She knew they were selling out.
Yeah.
So she went over into the corner. There she was. Did it on the mobile app.
No, I'm telling you, it's the best way to go. So I got mine. That's why I always say, load that mobile app, load it on your phone. We took your phone call or you shopping via the internet into consideration. So don't hang up. Do not hang up. We took you